gentlemen, please welcome Bob Pittman, the Global CEO of Clear Channel, to the stage. Welcome to Rome.
How are you?
How are you? Very nice to meet you. Come on.
Thank you.
Sit down. Okay, so same format, few questions from me, and then questions from the floor. Welcome to Rome and the Festival of Media. It's lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Now, in Steve's presentation, radio, which is obviously a key part of your portfolio, is just creeping up there. How do you explain, perhaps it's not quite as a sexy enough medium these days, or what? Doesn't seem to be drawing the attentions of advertisers as much as it should.
Well, I think radio's done a terrible job of marketing itself. I was retired for 8 years, spent most of my time in digital and TV. And what is interesting about radio is it performs such a unique function. And of all this discussion we're doing about the different media, it's the one that probably benefits the most. The biggest trend right now is people are leaving the home. In my entire career, and I was back in the early days of two-way TV with Cube in Columbus, Ohio, AOL was, the Facebook and Google of the late 90s. We always looked at the connected home. And indeed, the merger of Time Warner and AOL was predicated on the connected home. Funny thing happened. As soon as there was the consumer connected instead of the home, they left the home. And now that we're out of home, radio, outdoor, two of our major businesses are blurring with the whole mobile world. I mean, if you think about mobile, isn't radio mobile? Isn't outdoor mobile? That suddenly we're the beneficiary. And I think what people have also failed to recognize is, how does radio fit into the mix? TV is America's hobby. People treat TV shows sort of like they do their hobbies. They talk about Game of Thrones the way they talk about fantasy football. The internet has been the manage my life box. We take all this stuff that we like to do and put it in this box, and it's really wildly convenient and helpful. If I'm having an argument with you over dinner, I'll quickly Google and see who's got the right answer. It's my reference source, and radio is the companion. And people treat it like the companion. And in terms of advertising sales, probably what influences you the most is not an ad you heard on the radio or TV or on internet. It's your best friend telling you something. Mm-hmm. And if radio begins to be the best friend, we have enormous influence over people. And we're just now getting some data from Nielsen. They bought Arbitron in the US. They put the information about the listening with their purchase panel, and for the first time ever we have ROI data, not stuff pointing at ROI, but real ROI. And what you're finding is radio has this incredible return of TV, of digital. Maybe, I'm not seeing all the other stuff. Ad Age said it was greater than TV and digital. So to me, we're now getting the evidence that these aren't just theories, but this is truth.
Do you still think that radio and as a medium can still stand up to the growing number of customizable playlist businesses that are out there, the Spotifys, the Pandoras, and so on?
Well, I think that's...
Do you see there being clear space between the radio as a medium and this, interestingly disruptive digital music technology?
It's funny, I don't think it's disruptive. And again, maybe it's just I'm so old, I've been through these things before. But what you're talking about is really the music collection, which is 180 degrees from radio. In the old days, when I was a young kid, it was AM radio and 45 RPM records. Right. Those 45 RPM records morphed to 8-track tapes, cassettes, CDs, LPs, and now electronic. Yeah. And what we're really looking at with Pandora, and by the way, the custom radio feature of iHeartRadio, is we're looking at the newest version of the music collection. The music collection, now I'm going to go back to the consumer because I think we can fool ourselves if we don't watch the consumer all the time, is the music collection is when you want to escape the world. You want to curate for yourself for this moment in time. I come home from work, tough day, I may put on the headphones, pour myself a drink, go, I'm out of it. I don't want to hear commercials, I don't want to hear a disc jockey, I don't want any information. Yeah. Radio is when you want to find out what's going on in the world. And you're saying, what's happening? I mean, there's a reason we pay some of our top talent $10, $20 million a year because they're worth it. And what the radio does, it's sort of like walking into a busy bar with all your friends. And you walk in and say, hi, Bob, here's what's going on. We tell you the weather, the traffic, any sort of news you're interested in, down to is Miley Cyrus twerking. or did Justin Bieber cut his hair?
Yeah.
And the idea in our morning shows on our music stations is they play almost no music. Why? Because our compact with the listener is by the time you get to work, we'll catch up on everything that happened.
Yeah.
So when you hit work and everybody's talking about these topics, you won't be left out. So when you look at that experience, you understand that actually those two are very symbiotic.
Yeah.
In the old days, radio would play a record, and you go out and buy a 45 RPM record. Today, radio plays a record, you discover it, you may put it in your playlist on one of these other services. Indeed, a study was just out this year that said about 70%, a little over 70% of consumers discover their new music on FM radio. If we looked at Pandora users, it was also about 70%. If we look at Spotify users, it was also about 70%. So although they're keeping their music here and using it here, they're still discovering it on radio. And if you look at radio from 1970 to 2013, about 92% of the people listen to radio every week. About 92% of the people listen to radio every week. Yeah. It's a remarkably stable business.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you're one of the co-founders of MTV.
Yes, I was.
So you've branched out there. Now you've come back to sort of.
Well, it's interesting. You know, MTV was, and I was there because I saw this whole new cable networks, specialized networks, giving the consumer what they want when they want it. Still about convenience. You could pick and choose from 24-hour services to put together the programming that's right for you. I was at AOL, went on the board in 95, went there in 96 as the president, and we were doing the same thing. We were taking all the things you want to do, and again, following a new revolution. Yeah. The internet was just hitting the marketplace, and we were trying to revolutionize it. I think in this mobile world that the businesses we have of radio and outdoor are in the sweet spot. And by the way, our digital service sitting in between iHeartRadio, and in the case of outdoor, we just announced the Clear Channel Connect. You saw some of it on the video, where we love it because it makes our products more connected to the consumer. And if we view our business as sort of connecting these products to the consumers and making that connection, the mobile is one more device, the cell phone, for our mobile products, which are radio and outdoor.
Now, you've put $5 million of your own money into Clear Channel, and
yes.
You've got, and probably greater than that, you've devoting, a big portion of your energy and time to this business.
I was happily retired. I don't know what happened.
One of your old colleagues said you've been reincarnated so many times that your name should be Buddha, which I think was interesting. But you obviously see the growth coming from somewhere. Where do you see that? Is it in the extension of the radio business globally, or is it in the mobile and your out-of-home business? Where's the growth coming from?
I think it's in all. I think one thing we saw the numbers on TV growing. I think everyone who's a TV advertiser probably recognizes that we're probably overspending on TV. TV's wonderful. The media mix has probably gotten out of whack. I think radio deserves a lot more than it gets. The usage is about the same as the internet every day, and it's about a third of the money spent in radio is spent in digital. Yeah. So I think media mix has changed, and I think, we were talking about now we have the math, the science to do it. I think now that we're getting real ROI data, real measurement that matters to the advertiser, we'll see that number go up, and it should. Yeah. One of my buddies who runs one of the film studios in LA said, he was looking at some data for me. He said, okay, our exit survey shows 60% of the people say they heard about the movie on TV, 20% from radio. Then he looked at his ad spend. He had spent 80% of his money on TV, 3% on radio. His media mix is wrong. So I think that's it. I think in outdoor, the fact that people are now spending more time out of home, that's a rising trend all over the world, and the fact that we now have technology with our new interactive digital displays, we're rolling that out to everywhere. We're using the NFC and QR to really connect people. There is a train station in Copenhagen and you saw a piece of it there, it looks like a bookstore. Yeah. And you now go in and you can scan the book, you can read the book a little bit, you can browse it, you can buy it. So maybe we're almost getting into real estate in some of these businesses. So I think they're all coming together built on this trend.
The panel business, you've got almost 700,000 panels across your footprint across the world, and yet probably only 4,000 of those are properly digital,
right?
Which is less than 1% of the total stock. Clear Channel has got into trouble in the past with the capital investment required to start to, really build that. How do you square that? Because
well, there's
presumably you have to
no
roll
better
out these...
and quicker return we have than putting up a digital board. And although the number of panels is small, we're obviously putting them in our high traffic locations. Yep. So the percent of traffic is much greater, and that's really where we're focusing.
And how many digital panels would you expect, next year and the year after?
We haven't announced anything publicly on that, but I think we have an appetite, a voracious appetite for it, and there's no problem with capital on that, because I think I think everyone agrees these days, and you look at the numbers, the return on digital conversion is fantastic for us. And also I think it's not only just digital, it's also interactive. Yeah. And I think what William Eccleshare and the outdoor folks are doing now is really making these pieces so the line gets very blurry as to what it is. Is it a store? Is it a mobile device? Is it a display?
Well, actually, there's a question I was going to ask. As your digital panels get more sophisticated and interact with mobile phones, you've got two opportunities, and I'd like to hear your sort of vision on both. The one is simply the metrics, understanding where the user is, the locational targeting opportunities that you can sell back to advertisers. The second is obviously the e-commerce opportunities there. Do you see yourself as a technology business in that side of things, and do you see yourself becoming an e-commerce business?
I think we're a technology-enabled business. I think we continue to be a marketer for our clients. We help them connect with their consumers in all sorts of interesting ways. You're right, we have data now we never had, although we're talking about the couponing and how that was in the 1930s. I think we have to be careful today, because what we really are looking for is not just the data of who was there, but what kind of impact we had on them. At my days at AOL, when I went to AOL, we had $1 billion marketing budget. We were losing $500 million a year, so I cut the budget to $500 million. What I did next was probably the revelation for the people there. They said, look, radio and TV doesn't work because we use it and no one calls our 800 number. And I go, I don't think that's the value of it. We spent about $60 million on advertising on radio and TV, and our response rate to our direct mail, which was the $500 million, went up so much that we actually got more members for $500 million than we had expected to get and have been getting for the $1 billion run rate. And so it was not just sheer numbers, it was what's the combination and what's it doing. And I think what we're seeing is not only are we using the phones, but actually, as you saw up there, you can actually, these are touch screens too. Cut out the step of the phone, just go touch it and get what you're looking for.
Okay, and what about the e-commerce opportunities?
Well, I think
are you looking at that seriously? Are you investing behind that? Are there sort of, businesses?
And I think we're investing for our partners. In the case of, we've got bookstore, we've got grocery stores, we've got cosmetic stores, which are really flat panels that people interact with and they buy. You're coming home from work, you're at the train station, you order your groceries, when you get home, they're delivered. Pretty neat. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not this kind of device, but it's a big enough screen that it looks familiar to you. You can look around and feel like you're in the store.
Let me touch a bit on content, because it's traditionally the case with at least the out-of-home side of the business that you don't own the content. You have the fusion of radio. You have some deals now with some interesting acts, Taylor Swift and Paul McCartney. You've got these sign-ups with. Do you see the requirement to invest more into the side of the content business in order to sort of become more of a conventional media owner? Or do you still see yourself as very much the provider of the screens? Well,
we've always invested in content. I think on the outdoor side, we're investing more in the technology and the things that help our clients connect their message and their brands to the consumer. I think on our radio and digital side, we're using the relationships we already have. In the United States, if you want to break a record, you want to be a big artist, you got to be on Clear Channel. And so we have fantastic relationships with the artist, and it's not just airplay today. It's, okay, you're ready to play the iHeartRadio Music Festival, which is a big festival in Vegas every year, 2-day festival. Or we're ready to do an album release party, which we've done with everybody from Taylor Swift and Justin Timberlake to Paul McCartney. Or we're going to do a world premiere of your new song, and in some cases video. We did Madonna's video a couple of years ago using our outdoor and our radio, and we did it around the world, both the song and the video. So we've got the ability to create that content. I mean, we spend tons of money on all the people and the pieces, and we bring in others as part of our content.
And as brands get closer to those massive live events, you do 20,000 a year.
Right.
Do you see the opportunity to become the owner of that brand relationship, or is it the brand who becomes the owner of the celebrity endorsement? You know, the world is obviously getting very complicated between the agents and between the brand owners and between the content creators and the delivery systems such as Clear Channel. Where do you see that netting out?
Look, I think at the end of the day, ownership's a scary word because I don't think it accurately reflects what's going on. Is what we're really doing is we are renting our consumer relationship to unaffiliated third parties. And when it will help them to associate with a big star, we push them into that association. And what we're trying to do is create authentic relationships. I think if you look at bad advertising, it's when you try and shoehorn something into it, probably makes the client look bad. Probably the artist goes, who's that standing on stage with me? It's got to be something that looks natural and real. And I think those sorts of opportunities have been great. We've done some great stuff with Target. We just did it with Shakira. We've done it with Justin Timberlake, in which they're selling the music. We're doing the album release party. It all is very natural ties together. So what we're looking for is naturalness. And at the end of the day, the benefit is for the consumer, and we're taking the advertiser to that consumer in a vehicle which I think enhances their chances that the consumer will buy that product.
You're still quite weighted to being a US business, obviously particularly on the radio side.
Right.
The out-of-home, a bit more spread in key markets. I mean, as the business moves forward, do you see Clear Channel becoming more of a truly global multimedia business?
I think it's possible. Clearly outdoor, we're able to own the businesses around the world. Radio, TV tend to have very strong foreign ownership restrictions, and there become limitations as to where you can go. Digital is an opportunity for us to grow. We've taken iHeartRadio into Australia and New Zealand, and are looking at other opportunities around the world, and I'd say that's a possibility for worldwide distribution.
Whilst the audience here are priming themselves to ask you questions, I just have a couple more, so I'm waiting to see some hands fly up. You know, from a business point of view, you've got some fantastic properties, still have $20 billion of debt on the balance sheet.
Right.
For a business that's turning over $6 billion thereabout. How do you trade out of that?
Well, to us, it depends on what you think about leverage. I'm an equity holder. Yeah. The equity holders love leverage because it turbocharges your return on your equity. Yeah. So the question is, how much leverage can you put on something? If you hit a 2009, you don't like leverage at all. If these estimates are true about what's going on in advertising, you love leverage. Yeah. So I think the key is, do we have enough money to service our debt, which is always the problem with leverage. Yep. You borrow money on your house, can you make the house payments? Yeah. As long as we can, I think it's probably beneficial, but everybody has a different risk profile. I tend to like risk because it has rewards with it.
You're an interesting company because, you're often, particularly in Europe, where we obviously are, the out-of-home business is always juxtaposed to JCDecaux, and there's the healthy, creative, commercial tension between those two.
Right.
Yet in the States, you're much more sort of, a radio business. So how do you define, let's say in 3 years, how would you define?
I think in the U.S. we're really a multi-platform company. We're in almost every segment of the business, including, we got about 20 network TV shows going. And I think what we're doing with advertisers in the U.S. is we're able to put the platform together, use the pieces of our arsenal that help them for whatever program they've got, and are especially spending time on really custom solutions, especially for our bigger advertisers. I think around the world, we are obviously an outdoor company, but I think that's changing rapidly. I mean, I would argue with all the stuff we're doing now, we're as much a mobile company. The display just happens to be bigger than it is on my phone, and bigger than the iPad, but it's doing the same thing. And I think as a company, because we have so much expertise in that and so much experience, that we're really looking at the outdoor as sort of being the leader to play in that mobile world. We may not own the handset, we're using it, we don't have to own it, because we're still able to give the benefit of it to our advertising partners.
You mentioned the beginnings of your career. I think we might have something to see how you look. So where are? Oh, look at that! Woo! Ladies' man!
That's a little scary, isn't it? I think I'm age 21 there in Chicago. But
that's starting your career before the MTV days and so on. But you're aging pretty well. That's good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But one quick question before I open it up.
This is
to
the problem with the internet.
Yeah,
There's too much stuff available.
Actually, your PA gave me that a couple of days ago.
Okay.
But anyway,
have a discussion there.
Looking good. You were the COO of AOL Time Warner. I'd love to know what learnings did you take from that, ill-fated time?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the truth is the combined company in 2001, even with 9/11, did the biggest earnings growth of any of the media and entertainment companies. But what happens in a world like that, especially in the recession, is that once you get a perception that something's wrong, then it is wrong. And I think there's also a tremendous culture clash between the two companies. I was an old Time Warner person and knew it going in, and Steve Case and I had a lot of discussions about it. And I think the risk was that AOL was a company where all the senior executives worked on the business. Time Warner was a company where the division heads ran the business and the corporate people were sort of portfolio managers. Right. And that was a great culture clash and one that ultimately could not be overcome.
Right. Cultural issue. Okay, thank you, Bob. Questions for Bob Pittman? We have only time for one or two, so let's see hands up. Oh, thank you, sorry. Because that was you, Guy, I thought you were telling me to time me. Please, your name and the company you're from, please.
My name is Louis Dvorkin. I'm from Forbes. And Bob, I'd like to ask you about radio or audio news on the cell phone and where you think that's headed, and as well as advertising for radio or audio news on the cell phone. If it's about discovery, news should be important, and I'm interested in how you feel about that.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. 25% of our radio stations are not music or news, talk, information. We found on iHeartRadio, we've developed iHeartRadio Talk, and it's actually been a remarkable growth area for us. When we do push alerts, what we found we actually have the best response to are news. News about Malaysia Air, news about an explosion in Harlem in New York, things that are very current, earthquakes in LA, and we're learning that consumer is very interested in it. On terrestrial radio, we have 25% of our radio stations are talk, news, information, but it's only about 15% of the listening. On digital, the same group of radio stations, about 25% of the listening is done to talk, news, and information. So I think, people quickly begin to think of iHeartRadio as a music app. It's not. It's primarily a radio app. And they forget that when people say, I'm looking to radio to find out what's going on in the world, often that includes places where there's no music at all. So I think it's very important, and I think the advertiser is also very interested in that environment as well, especially certain types of advertisers being associated with that environment and that currency.
Do you see a role for the advertiser in creating the news content as well?
Absolutely. I think the advertiser has enormous flexibility in this new world. And look, when we create stuff on air, when we do the iHeartRadio Music Festival, those sponsors are actively involved in what it is and what it feels like. When we do the ultimate pool party, it's the same thing. Last year Fiat had the commercial of going underwater. Fiat was sitting on top of the pool, a Fiat car. And so we're able to sort of think about how does it fit properly in this environment. And the best time to do it is when we're designing it, not when we built it and said, hey, do you want to slap your name on it?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I thank you very much for attending the
Thank
festival?
you. It's
great
great
insights.
fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Pittman.
Thank you. Appreciate it.